Dr. Oz, I just want to thank you for sitting down and agreeing to do this with me, and I also want to thank you for the amazing opportunity this year. It's been really fun, and I've enjoyed it a lot.
It's been blissful for me. I'm honored to be here with you. You did a great job.
All right, so I have a couple questions for you, and the first one is easy. What made you want to go into medicine?
You know, the reality for a lot of physicians, and I don't know if you all feel this way, but I'll share my personal experience, is that I was fascinated by the human body. So there's a little bit of a selfish motivation initially, and then you begin to realize how cool this body is, and then you want to take care of it. You want everyone else to take care of theirs, and you want to help them take care of theirs. So crazily, the scientific interest, the curiosity, starts to cultivate a much more altruistic motivation, which is that get people to recognize how special this entity that we inherited from our parents, the most valuable thing we're ever going to get, is, and then to respect it and manage it. And when you see people who are abusing their body, you want to intervene. When you think things are broken, you want to fix them. You gain a tremendous amount of respect for this magnificent machine, and that, I think, ultimately what catalyzes many people in medicine to spend their whole life doing it. And along the way, I realized that the best part about medicine is I'd never know it all.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can continually learn, it'll challenge you your entire life, and God bless it. I never wanted to be in a field where I could figure it all out.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of the things that they talk about now you never would have guessed in medical school or never even learned in medical school.
My first day of medical school, a very famous professor of ours, said that half of what we would learn in our 4 years of med school would be proven wrong by the time our careers were over.
Oh my God.
The problem, of course, you don't know which half. I could have saved a lot of time. But I do believe he's right.
Yeah.
I was the first class to have immunology in medical school. And I'm not that old. I mean, I might look old, but I mean, that was so shocking that we didn't have immunology. And it became the foundation of so much that we did for the rest of my career. The guys who were literally a year ahead of me didn't even have an immunology class.
That's crazy to me because that was a big focus when I was in school and everything. Do you have a particular story or a particular moment in medical school that stands out to you as a favorite moment?
There are so many that I can recount. I still remember my first day of anatomy class. And anatomy class, of course, alphabetical. So I had O'Donnell, O'Connell, Oz, and Orell. So Howie Orell's dad was a podiatrist, so he went to the feet. And I don't know if I can even say this. So Christine was interested in psychiatry, so she had very little interest in the body. So she played around with the brain. And then O'Donnell ended up becoming my best friend and my roommate. He said he wanted the perianal region. I said, what are you talking about? He was kidding me, of course, because he said he was going to be a proctologist, which he did not become a proctologist. But I always wanted the heart.
Yeah.
And I remember as we were dividing it up, everyone sort of had their sort of base idea what they wanted to do. But I was pretty lasered in on what I thought would be the most interesting organ. And not that the heart's better than the other organs. It is actually.
I was going to say, basis of everything.
But it was right for my personality. And I think a lot of folks, as they go to medical school, don't recognize how important that is. It's not just what you like, it's what you naturally have an affinity for. They overlap.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that the heart required me to make fast decisions, to live with the decisions, to move on and go to the next decision because you can't play defense doing heart surgery. But I also recognize that the structure appealed to me. It was constructive surgery. It wasn't ablative. I didn't take anything out usually.
Yeah.
So it addressed a lot of the issues that I thought I would need to be able to do in order to be happy in my career. And I always joke that thank goodness it existed, because I really don't know what else I would have done in medicine that would have given me as much joy as being a heart surgeon. But it all started in anatomy class, and because I knew that if I could understand the anatomy of the heart, I could understand the function of the heart. Mm-hmm. That function follows form.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. So did you ever consider any other specialties, or was it?
Well, I considered general internal medicine, which I adored.
Really?
Yeah, because medicine, just being a real doctor, I take care of all the things.
It's what you think of when you think of medicine.
It's Marcus Welby and MD and all the other classic doctor shows were about being able to do all those things. Mm-hmm. So I knew I wanted to do a general field. Mm-hmm. So I didn't consider things like ophthalmology that I was fascinated by. But there were lots of things that give you general exposure. Radiology does, anesthesia does, pathology does.
Rheumatology, I think rheumatology involves every organ system.
And then there was nephrology, which I loved because I thought they were the smartest people in the building because they knew all those little subtle chemical pathways, and they could. If I didn't know how to figure out what was wrong with the patient of mine, I always called the nephrologist. I'd make up a reason to call nephrology because they'd find some wacky metabolic reason I never would have thought of to address it. And I thought about urology because I just liked the fact that you could just completely capture an organ system and really know it well.
Yeah.
Diagnose the problem, treat the problem, and then do the follow-up on it. And I do think most of us could probably take a large swath of medicine into heart. But I knew that whatever field I picked, I had to be exposed to patients. Because what gave me chi, what gave me energy every day was looking in their eyes and recognizing that there was something we could do together.
Yeah.
And that if they trusted me and I could rely on their willingness to do the right thing, we could get a good outcome.
Yeah, you have to find the thing that gives you energy and it motivates you to keep going in a field that is at times stressful and difficult, long hours, everything.
There's some cheese sucks out there. If you haven't found them yet, you will. But it's not just people, it's ideas and concepts. And some tasks just don't give you the desired response. And it's not even about time management, it's about energy management. If the things you do give you energy, chi, life force, and you'll do them all the time, which is good because you're going to have to do a lot of it to be good at it.
Do you have any advice for people who are thinking about going into medical school? Because I know a lot of people who watch the channel have a lot of questions about medical school and are applying or interested in going. And so any advice for
Don't
them?
do it, pull up. I tell my own kids, it's the best job I could ever imagine in the world. You find whatever version of it you like, but go do it. And I think it's the same advice to everyone watching right now. I can't imagine a better opportunity to find what you want to do in life than in medicine. And even if you don't practice full time for the rest of your life, that fund of knowledge could be hugely beneficial. You come up with lots of other ideas to make humanity a better place. Don't get down on all the BS that gets circulated about changing elements of medicine. I've been hearing that since I was in medical school. And they told me, don't go into medicine, it's going to be dead. What are you talking about?
Computers will do everything.
Yeah, there were so many reasons. Antibiotics will cure all diseases. Forget about that. Or cancer's pretty much on the way out. I wish it was that simple. And maybe one day it'll be true, but it's not true now, and it wasn't true when I trained.
Yeah.
And I think we've got a couple more generations of people being involved. I suspect for the rest of known human history, it'll be like that as well. But I do think it's important for you to figure out what field you want to be in that's changing in the direction that you like it.
That's a good
So when I was training, heart disease offered the biggest advances, I thought. And obviously many other fields are advancing rapidly as well. We just talked about immunology, but the heart was perfect. Today, I love neurosurgery, neurology, that the brain is advancing rapidly. I think a lot of the less invasive approaches to solving problems are gaining a lot of credibility for good reason. We had clinical trials this year on some of the percutaneous aortic and mitral valve devices.
Exactly.
So it's pretty cool to see those things come to fruition. And yet you may find another field that satisfies your need. As an example, the biggest problem in America today is loneliness. So if you're going to psychiatry or a field that deals with emotional issues, go get them, because we certainly need more experts in addiction medicine, problems dealing with some of the basic anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar. These are not adequately treated yet, and we need more people with smart brains pulling the oars.
Yeah. And I really believe that every specialty, even if you're ophthalmology and you're dealing with the eye is the window to almost every organ system. Obviously, it's the only place you can see the blood vessels without going inside the body, and so you can diagnose diabetes, you can diagnose heart disease just by looking at the eye. So
it's the window into the soul.
Exactly. So I think a lot of the specialties, you think, maybe I'm focusing too much on one thing, but everything's interconnected in the body. So I think a lot of.
So what did you enjoy in the show today? Not today, this year. You took a year out of your very promising medical career.
Yes.
I promised your parents going back to med school.
They made me promise before I came here that I was going back to medical school.
What catalyzed your decision to take a year off and to come here, and what's your experience been like?
So what catalyzed my decision, it was kind of twofold. Firstfold is I didn't feel ready to make the decision to choose a specialty yet, and I wasn't quite ready to do that. And I wanted to do something where I could kind of see how the medical field interacts with the real world outside of the medical field, how people on the outside view the medical field, what they like to hear about the medical field. And I wanted to go to a place that gave me the ability to do that on a mass scale, which, obviously medicine in the media is an undeniable part of medicine, and everyone gets health advice from the media. And I think it's fascinating what people choose to listen to, and then how you can give them this information that in a way that's digestible to them and retainable to them, and give them a way that they can change their life without visiting a doctor. And so I think I've gained a lot of skills here that will carry me forward in my career, and I'm just so thankful to have had this opportunity.
So what was the most surprising experience you had here?
Most surprising, I think a lot of it was how I get to, the amount of, not autonomy, but the amount of say I get in kind of what goes on the show. Obviously we get to give ideas, and then even if there are ideas that aren't ours, we get to give ideas on what, we work with so closely with the producers, and there's such a camaraderie there, and it's so nice that there's so much respect, and that we get like the opportunity to put what we think is important on the show, which I think is just amazing. And I mean, that's kind of a big deal for someone young, and I think it's such an incredible experience.
Well, you earn our trust. If you weren't doing such a great job, and the med unit, which Erin's part of, is the nuclear reactor force of the show. Come up with all the ideas, that hardcore medical stuff, but you vet everything else we do.
Yeah.
And so you end up nudging us in the right direction. So God bless you for doing that.
Thank you. And I have one last question for you.
Please.
They're related. Part A and Part
She
B
always
in
does
one
this.
question.
One last question, but there's 7 parts
there's
to it.
7 parts
and each
to
one of
it.
those is 7 parts. It's very biblical.
So the first one is there a particular show that you've done or a particular moment on this show that has struck you the most or that you've enjoyed the most?
Well, they're a little different.
Okay.
And I loved my 1000th show,
Okay.
where I got to get surprised by a bunch of friends, and William Shatner came on, and Alex Trebek, who has a cancer diagnosis now, came on. I've always adored Jeopardy and loved him as a host. Just so smart television. Hugh Jackman was a good friend, came on, talked about skin cancer. But I was really celebrating the fans, the folks who've been watching the show for all those years. And we've been on 10 years, so it's sort of nice to reconnect with people and remember what it was like before we started. Because we've been able to influence a lot of people to think differently about their responsibility, but also their opportunity. And you can become the world expert in your body. That was always the high level promise and hope. But I also have had shows that touched me deeply because I had deep epiphanies during them. As an example, with Charlie Sheen, who we sort of did an intervention on. He came on for a series of shows, and over the course of that year, he just got diagnosed with HIV, why that happened, how he coped with that, how you treat that. But at the same time, he has deeper emotional issues that drive him to a lot of his bizarre behaviors. Dragon blood, these kind of commentaries that feel almost like he's in a manic state. And it was interesting to watch him go through it in the ups and downs. And I remember he left at one point, got mad. He wanted to go examine this Mexican physician's approach to curing HIV. And I said that I thought there wasn't really a cure yet, at least in Mexico at a clinic that no one had heard of.
Right.
He went down there and he basically was getting, I think, steroid injections, which make you feel good.
Yeah. But
And
also drop your immune system, aren't great for your
They
immune
hindered
system as well.
over time, but he had just taken a couple doses and he came to the studio, and we agreed that we would talk about this guy, but only if Charlie agreed to get his blood test so I could look at his counts. And his counts were through the roof. And he got the news on the air. I did too. And it changed everything. And you saw him transform in front of you. Those are always the most important experiences for me. When you watch someone like Paula Deen, who was Paula Deen was 18, 2 kids, out of a job.
Wow.
And all these years later built an empire, and what her biggest challenge was the shame she felt over cigarettes. And you watch that epiphany happen for her. A wonderful woman, by the way.
Yeah.
And like everyone, we all have missteps, but it's sort of nice to watch people have those transformations. And those are the shows that I treasure the most.
And then Part B is, what is your favorite show to watch on television?
I do love Jeopardy.
Really?
I play with the kids. Yeah. I love Jeopardy. These days, I gotta say, Game of Thrones is hard to beat.
Really?
Yeah. So my wife loves it. So I have to sit there and I love the oral tradition. And this is kind of a big issue for me, is that a lot of us have forgotten to tell stories or listen to stories. And the greatest story is Star Wars is a good example. But Hobbit. But they're based on archetypal stories that all of humans from known history have thought about. I remember going to a place in Turkey called Göbekli Tepe. It's the oldest civilization that we know of. It's 12,000 years old. It stands for Potbelly Hill. That's the translation. And these people had these big tea temples that were 17 feet high, and they were worshiping them. And they had stories that they were making sculptures around. We've had them all through, not just the biblical traditions, but the Gilgamesh and the Vedic traditions. There are all kinds of stories that we've used, and those archetypal stories are like urns at the end of your life path, and you got to fill them with whatever fluid you fill them with, but you got to fill them, and not filling them enough is a problem. So stories are important. You got to tell stories. I think on the show that's what we primarily do, is create stories, narratives around things that matter. So if we do it well, people watch it, they enjoy it, and they actually remember it.
And they learn something.
And as physicians, too often we're just the facts man. And my biggest epiphany, if I could share this with you on the show, is that people do not change based on what they know. They change based on how they feel. So if you can get people to feel differently, Erin, then for the rest of your career, you'll get them to act on it. So when a cigarette smoker comes to my office, I don't say, you're going to die of cigarettes if you don't quit. They know that.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
Right? So if they hear that from me, they just feel less than.
Yeah.
Because if they're competent, they would have stopped already.
Yeah.
So now what do? They feel badly, so they go outside and they smoke
Yeah.
to deal with the stress.
Yeah,
So instead,
that's so
I
true.
always say, first off, I'm not going to operate until you stop smoking. So we have little stakes here. And just to elevate it a little bit more, people who brought you to the office love you. And I just want you to love yourself as much as I do and care about you. And if you actually feel that way about yourself as your family does, you'll stop smoking because you've never put a cigarette in someone else's mouth. Same thing for food, right? The people you care about, what would you feed them? Put that in your mouth. And those kinds of emotional hooks are much more impactful.
I mean, that's the golden rule, right?
Golden rule.
Well, thank you so much. I
It's
really
been a pleasure,
appreciate
Erin.
it. And guys, make sure to follow Dr. Oz. Tune in for the show, and I'll see you next time.
Forget about me, just the future. Listen to Erin, whatever she says.
All right.